Now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Jason Collum. Jason served for 27 years in the San Francisco Police Department, with 8 years in patrol and 19 years in investigation. He was a senior district attorney inspector in San Francisco who specialized in investigating elder financial abuse cases. Jason is a recognized expert who has presented his case studies to law enforcement and prosecution groups from over a dozen countries. Fluent in Chinese, he has investigated and published on many Chinese-specific frauds and scams. Jason has worked with the ARP on a number of occasions, and we are so delighted to have him back with us. Hey, Jason, great to see you.
Thanks for having me again.
So we'll get started, Jason. These are the holidays, so a popular time of the year for people to take trips to visit family and friends, or even to sneak in one final vacation before the end of the year. Unfortunately, many scammers and thieves are well aware of this, and they look to exploit people's travel plans for their gains. So what are some basic things that people can do prior to leaving their homes to protect themselves?
So as we were speaking offline, one of the things that we tend to set aside when we're making our vacation plans are what should we do before we leave? So a lot of times we get into this panic mode the last day or two. So hopefully this will be like a reminder for the folks who are joining us that there are things you can do way beforehand before you leave just to relieve the stress of your travel day. So one of the first things I always recommend is, especially if you're heading overseas, make a copy of your passport. So make a copy of your passport, or maybe even two copies. Keep one at home, bring a copy with you, and of course, bring your passport with you. And we'll address that when we talk about once you get overseas. And the other thing is make copies of your credit cards, your ATM cards that you're going to bring abroad with you. Make sure you get the front and the back of the cards, because usually the telephone number for the financial institution, it's printed on the card itself. And it sure beats being overseas and trying to search out the right number to contact just to cancel or activate or deactivate your card. So again, keep copies of that at home. Bring your credit card with you, and also bring the copy with you, and keep them separate. In terms of looking physically at your house, think about your garage. And when I say garage, not just your main garage door, not just the back door or the side door that secures it. Let's say a garage has a window. Well, does this window allow outsiders to see whether your car is inside or not? If it does, you might want to consider putting some curtains or blinds there just to show, just so the folks who with prying eyes can't see that your car has been missing for a long time. And a lot of times when we go to long-term parking lots in the airport, we tend to take the oldest car that's in the fleet. And the oldest car that's in the fleet is usually parked on the street or on the driveway. So a lot of times when you move that car, you'll see debris that are left around it or underneath it. And there might be some oil stains that are pretty permanent. So you might want to think about moving that car first, cleaning the debris all around it so it doesn't look obvious to anybody driving by to see that there's a vehicle missing at this address day and night for a while, when it usually is there. The other thing that might cost a little bit money, but not too much. You don't have to go all out and get the most fancy ones, but the old mechanical dial light switches where you can program it to come on and off during the day and night, those are really helpful. Because if you think about it, you drive by people's houses, you walk by people's houses, when you see lights on in different rooms, it tends to make you think that there's somebody in there. And it's even an added bonus that these lights will go off and come on at different times. It's just what outsiders perceive as they drive around the neighborhood. Anything anything you can do to bolster the fact that you're still at home. And one of the most important things is a lot of folks spend a lot of money securing their front door. Most expensive locks. They put latches, lots of physical devices to secure their front door. But unfortunately, from what I've seen, most of the burglaries and forced entries into homes are via a side door or back door. So think more about that. Instead of placing all of your investment or your devices up front, think about putting those devices in the back. Think about cameras in the back also, because that is the more likelihood that if somebody's going to gain entrance, they're going to come in from the back or the side. And then in terms of an alarm, a lot of folks have alarms, and it's helpful and not at the same time, because unfortunately, and we're all guilty of this, is that a lot of times we have accidental activations. And so after a few of those, some of us turn it off, and some of us get billed by the local police department, and we stop using them. And a lot of times, the priority is pretty low on these alarms. So kind of weigh out your situation, where you live, the response time, and what the police department's policy on is on alarms, whether they charge you for service, whether they don't, and weigh all of that, because I think there are a lot of other places that you can spend that money on to secure your home instead. And then if you're going to install a camera, make sure, please, go with the 4K. I've seen footages from surveillance cameras in the last 30 years of my career, and most of them have been pretty useless. But the 4Ks, just absolutely amazing. So if you're going to invest in a new camera system, make sure it's a 4K standard and above. It's amazing how we're able to actually zoom in on a 4K capture and read a license plate from a block or half a block away. And these they're more useful in terms of solving the crime than it is a deterrent, which the old cameras tend to be a more deterrent than it is to solving the crime itself. So again, think about where you want to mount your cameras too. A lot of times we see cameras that are mounted too high. All we see are the heads of people or the tops of cars. So think about hiding a camera somewhere down your driveway. A lot of times an exterior mailbox at the end of the driveway, it's a good place to hide a camera, or in a tree out by your front yard. And mount it so that it will be able to capture an image as low as a license plate. In terms of safe inside the house, think about it. Think about how secure it is. Think about whether it's bolted to concrete or bolted to just wood or freestanding. If that's the case, you might as well think about having a safe deposit box for some of your more important documents. Then that include your personal information, such as your social security number, your date of birth, your IDs, and any cash that you're not going to bring along with you. So consider a safe deposit box. And most important thing to me is consider your guns and ammo. If you have guns and ammo laying around at home, please secure them. Secure them in such a way that they cannot be removed from the premise. Don't just put it in a safe box where somebody can just take the safe box and at their leisure in the future time pry open that safe box. The majority of the gun-involved felonies out there are committed with guns that were taken during home burglaries. Again, majority of the crime guns out there came upon the perpetrator's hand because it's taken from a home burglary. So please, if you're going to have firearms at home, please secure them before you leave. Lastly, in terms of physically what you can do is remember that in the next segment we're going to talk about ATM cash withdrawals. Remember that a lot of overseas ATM machines, they don't take pins that are over 4 digits. So some of us may have 6-digit pins. 6-digit pins are not accepted in some European countries and some Asian countries. So if you can contact your bank, you likely have to go in and change your pin to a 4-digit pin. That's going to help you down the line. Longer term things. If you have a 2-week horizon or more, think about a mail hold with the U.S. Post Office. There's a small yellow form, half-page yellow form. You should do it in person and you can submit it. So for the time that you're going to be away from your home, mail does not get delivered to your house and it doesn't pile up in your mailbox if you don't have a neighbor or a friend who can pick up your mail. Think about all the important information that your mail can contain: bank accounts, personal information, retirement information. So think about not leaving the mail inside your mailbox while you're gone. Security checks, what are they? Some of the police departments, usually the smaller agencies in smaller towns, they offer security checks. It's not a guarantee that the patrol officer will stop by your house, check the doors and the side gate. It's not a guarantee. They're not going to be on a schedule, but it is a service that a lot of police agencies offer. So you might want to check into that a few weeks out before you leave for your vacation. And in terms of online things, my goodness, I have seen next door postings. I have seen other postings where my neighbors are saying, I'm leaving, I'm going to Europe for a month and I'm bringing my child, and do I need to bring my child seat with me, or can I rent one at the rental car company? Well, guess what? You just announced the entire next door, which doesn't really have a very robust vesting system or vetting system. That's, you just told everybody that you're going to be away from your house for a month in Europe. So you just announced to everybody, hey, look, my place is open for you. So think about it. Be more wary of what you post online. Which brings us to social media. A lot of us get excited. We're heading off to our dream destination, right? So we're getting onto social media, Facebook, uh, Instagram, whatever it is. Think about it before you post it. I know you're excited. I get excited also, but think about not posting before you leave or while you're on a trip. But if you do want to share, it makes no difference if you share after you come back. Just some points to think about, because everybody who has access to those pages will know that you're gone. In terms of credit cards, there are credit cards that have no fees on foreign transactions. Make sure you check with your bank, or else you're going to be really surprised when you come back to check your statement. Same thing as ATM. Some ATM cards will let you withdraw money overseas at the going rate, whereas others slap a huge percentage on that. And years ago, it used to be where it's the safest way to travel is with traveler's checks. Well, I've done that about 15 years ago. What a mistake that was. Turns out there were only a couple of places in the town that I was in who was able to cash those travelers check, and I basically wasted a day just to get those travelers checks cashed.
Well, some great tips, Jason. Thank you. So these are all things that folks can do prior to leaving for your destination. You touched on it earlier. One of the first things that most people do, whether they're traveling locally or abroad, is to go to the ATM or exchange for the local currency. What are some things that people should be aware of prior to doing that?
I'm glad you brought that up. I've been burnt. So I used to get foreign currency from my own financial institution. And turns out that my own financial institution was charging me upwards of 13% fee just to get that amount. So just to give you an idea, for $100 worth of foreign currency that I was getting charged $113. So $13 on 100, it's not a good deal. So what I found and confirmed myself with my travels throughout Asia and Europe is that ATMs are very convenient now. So make sure that your financial institution lets you withdraw money from a foreign ATM with no transaction fees. But the most important thing is, when you get overseas, don't get excited and stick your ATM card into any ATM machine. Just like in the US, stick with the large local financial institutions. again, stick with the large local financial institutions, local to the country that you're visiting. The larger banks are going to offer you most likely the daily rate with a very, very low charge, maybe something in the order of like 0.5 or 1% even. So those are really, really worth it. And a lot of the American financial institutions that you open an account here, they'll refund you the $2 to $5 that I've seen in ATM fees. So you get that back too. But the most important thing is, let's just say you've arrived somewhere, you found this major bank's ATM. You stick your card in, it's working just fine. Hold on, read everything on the screen, because they will ask you whether you want your cash to be converted into from US dollars, or do you want it to be in local currency. Stick with the local currency. Stick with the local currency, because if that financial institution overseas converts it for you, they take a larger cut of service fee. But if you let your own financial institution convert it for you, you get more of your money back that way. That's my experience. And I've got a caveat on the major financial institutions. So I know we talk about banks, but turns out in Japan, and I know a lot of people have been traveling to Japan and have plans to travel to Japan soon. The local financial institutions were not allowing me to withdraw cash, but turns out the 7-Eleven bank, the 7 and Company Bank inside 7-Elevens are able to let me use my US ATM card with a very low fee. So again, you just got to have to experience on your own. Read the screen very carefully before you press any buttons accepting things. And what I always say is, please think about using a money belt. It's uncomfortable, but that is the way of the world now. It's probably the safest way to keep your cash. And what I always do is I would set aside enough local currency for one person's lunch in my front pocket, and keep my credit cards, my passport or a copy of my passport inside my money belt. And I don't withdraw anything from my money belt until I'm in the privacy of something like a bathroom or my hotel room. So kind of keep that in mind, because as much as you and I might think we blend in with the locals, we really don't, as I've found out.
Thank you, Jason. So you've arrived at your destination, you've stopped by the ATM or the money exchange place. Now you want to go out and enjoy the sights and sounds. But what are some things that folks should do prior to going out to explore the sites?
So one of the first things that we always do is we try to drop off our luggage in our hotel room or our Airbnb. So I was very uncomfortable doing what I'm about to say at first, but I got used to it. So turns out a lot of places in Europe, when you check in, the front desk wants to hold your passport, and they'll hold your passport until you leave. That's actually an accepted practice. I know I was uncomfortable in handing over my passport to someone. But again, after over 20 years of doing it, I haven't had an issue. It is customary for them to do it. But what I found out too is that the front desk will also accept a copy of your passport. So that's why I said, make a copy, leave one at the house, and bring one with you. And so you can always just leave a copy of your passport at the front desk. And in terms of the Airbnb host, a lot of times especially when they're legitimate, they pay city tax. So the city actually requires them to have a photograph of your passport. So don't feel too uncomfortable if your Airbnb host asks you for a picture of your photo page and your passport. It's customary, it's the rules, it's the laws locally. So don't worry about that. And then in terms of the keys, think about if you're gonna be out traveling, you don't know when you're going to be home or back at the Airbnb, and it's not a digital pad, and it's a hotel that's staffed 24 hours, consider leaving your keys there. I've never had a problem with leaving my keys up front. Again, a lot of my cohorts have had strange thoughts about leaving the keys up front with a stranger. But again, I've never had a problem. And especially if I'm going to enjoy water sports, it's nice not to have the liability of having a key on me. In terms of hotel room safes, yes, you do put in your own code, but do know that the front desks do have access to the an override to that safe inside your room, because sometimes those safes are left locked and they have to access it so they can have it open for the next person. So don't think because there's a safe inside the room, the safe is going to be a secure place. It might behoove you to think about hiding cash or something that's important to you in other places in the room that people are less likely to look, instead of putting it in the safe. But again, play it by ear. Think about it before you commit to either the safe at the front desk or hiding it on your own. And I always say, try to act local if you can. Trust me, we can't, and we stand out. But at the same time, act local. Try to act local. Greet locals in their dialect or their language. Kind of put things at ease instead of just punching it out there. Hey, I'm American. You need to help me. That helps a lot. In terms of dress, try to dress a little bit more local. I know a lot of folks like to wear nice things for pictures and whatnot. But again, that also sets you up as a potential target. And one of the things that I've heard over and over again after a few drinks with locals is that in Europe especially, they really dislike it when Americans claim a certain heritage. Let's say, hey, my grandparents are Italian. I'm Italian too, and really, what I've just overwhelmingly what I've heard is that the locals just think, no, you're American, and please don't try to be us, and we're not going to give you any special service because you claim to be us. So again, things like race, cultural background is very important to us in America, but it's really not that important when it's overseas. So think about things that flags you as an American. And again, please don't generalize that certain people hate Americans and whatnot. I think I think people are people when they meet you, and most people around the world welcome visitors, and it's not visitors from a region that they dislike. It's people who are usually not polite and over friendly, who gets the dislike from others. And most importantly is stop and listen. And I've heard this over and over again when I go on walking tours or go into a tour of a museum and place. Folks tend to interrupt the guide and say, well, back home we also have this. Back home we have that. Well, I'm on a tour to learn about this place that I'm in, so I'm not really interested in what they have to bring from home. So please kind of keep those comments down, and that would make you less likely to become a target. And again, once you're out and about, though, think about it. Think about it. Think about where you're going to go. And nowadays, I'm the same way. I rely heavily on Google Maps and maps in general on the phone. And one of the things that's really important is that you tend to become mindless when you follow your phone around. I always suggest and I recommend, if you have a guidebook, if you have a local map that you get at the airport, take a look at the local map and see where all the major ins and outs of that area that you're going to be going to, whether it overlaps another neighborhood or whether it goes into another neighborhood. Because if something happens at the place where you're going, bad, good, and whatnot, you want to be able to get out of there into a safe place and into the general direction of where your housing is going to be for the night. So think about it in kind of a map sense. If I need to head north, if I need to go up, down, whatever street it is, what are the major streets to get in and out of this area? Which leads me to the important part. We almost can't function without our phones now. It's very, very, very useful for travel. So for years, we went on to a SIM card. We purchased a SIM card when we arrived locally. Well, in recent 2 years, in my travels, when I arrived to local destinations, there are pop-up booths outside train stations with just random people selling you SIM cards. Well, I'm not comfortable with that because the SIM card gives somebody or a company access, remote access to everything that's on your phone. I'm not going to buy that from just anybody on the street. And a lot of times, I don't trust these folks who are just going to sell me a cheap SIM card. So consider an eSIM before you leave. And what an eSIM is without a chip, you just download the SIM from an online platform. And once you arrive at the destination, as soon as you turn the phone on, it'll be activated. So what I've always done is go ahead and do your Google search, and you will see what is the most trusted, reliable SIM cards or eSIM for a particular country or region, and stick with those big brands. And go ahead, once you make the purchase, you'll download the data or the SIM, the eSIM, and you have to actually start the activation process while you're at home with internet access and another device. So don't do this once you arrive at the destination. It's going to be a lot harder. So go ahead and download that, activate your eSIM at home, and you can turn it off while you're at home. And once you arrive at your destination, once you turn on that eSIM, you're online, you're ready to go out of the airport. You can head straight to your destination that way. And do your research, do your due diligence on places you're going to visit. In the last 4 years, travel has absolutely exploded, especially overseas travel. So chances are, whatever destination you're heading to, whatever site you're heading to, there's going to be a YouTube video on it. Check it out. Look for the do's and don'ts, and it'll save you time. It might save you money down the line also in terms of getting to the site and paying whatever it is that you're going to pay, or if it's free.
Thank you, Jason. So all really, really important and useful tips. The next question is, I think most of the scams and thefts occur when people are out, taking in the sites and exploring the destination and engaging with the locals. So what are some active measures that people can take when they're out, out and about, enjoying themselves to prevent themselves from falling victim to fraudsters?
One of the first things is try not to show off your wealth. Think about what you're wearing. Think about how you're acting. One of the pet peeves is tipping. So most countries in the world, tipping is not standard. Tipping is not normal, and Americans tend to be the only ones tipping. And whatever it is, whether it's appreciation for their service or showing off the wealth, well, don't do it. It's not customary in another country, and if you do it, it really messes us up for the locals, because now they're expecting it, and it also messes them up for future travelers, because some places that traditionally don't ask for tips, every other restaurant never asks for tips. There are a few restaurants that I've been to in just the past year in Italy that the waiter aggressively started asking for a tip, and the waiter actually aggressively says, well, this is not enough. Don't you pay 20% in America? This is the same here. So think about it before you do it. Think about your future visits, and more importantly, your fellow travelers' future visits. And most importantly, you think about the locals who have to live there and have to live those experiences and dine at those places on a regular basis for the rest of their lives. And a lot of times, Americans tend to travel with a schedule, with a very heavy schedule. We got to do this, we got to do that, and there's a rush to see everything within the 2-week vacation, and that's where a lot of times we get exploited because we're such heavy into rigidity of travel. We have to make certain sites, and people know it. So one of the scams that I see is that the skip the line scams, as in somebody will approach you while you're waiting in line and say, hey, look, I can get you front row access, I can get you in there faster, or go online, you do research for a site, and there are companies that pop up and saying that you can buy tickets from us and we'll get you there at this time slot. Well, it turns out a lot of those sites are free. So once you make the purchase, you don't actually get to get ahead of the line or get into the place. It's just, you just bought a ticket and you still got to wait in line. Again, just because they know that we're on a tight schedule, the bad people know that we're on a tight schedule, try to reel it back, slow it down. What I've also seen is affinity scam. What do I mean by that? I always say be wary of the super friendly English speakers or Americans who approach you and start conversation with you, and they start this very sad story about how they're stuck in whatever particular country they're in, and they just need a little help financially to get them back home. And so at that point, the victim feels a affinity attachment and feels like they should help a fellow American, and they give them cash up front and never receive the cash back when they get back. Another very common scam that I see all over the world is the transit ticket scam. You get to a local subway. A lot of times it's in a foreign language. It's only machines. There's nobody helping you. It's really hard to decipher and get your tickets the first time. So there are always people who are standing around you being very helpful. They speak English. And so I found out in Turin, when I buy a ticket from a machine, that ticket is good for 2 hours. So at the end of 2 hours, the ticket expires, it's not good anymore. So a lot of times the perpetrators will wait for somebody to exit a turnstile and ask them for their ticket. If you give them the ticket, this perpetrator will turn around and resell it to another traveler for a discounted rate. But turns out either this ticket has got 5 minutes before it expires, or it's got another hour before it expires. You just don't know. So the next traveler who buys it at a discount, even though they're able to make entry into the transit system, they're not able to exit. They need to buy another ticket just to get out. So all of those kind of, we're in a rush, we don't want to learn, somebody with a helping hand, be aware of those. And another one I saw in Paris is folks come up to you and tell you that they're at their daily limit to buy at a high-end designer store like LV. And they said, look, can you go in and help us buy more items, and we'll give you a 5% fee on this $3,000 item. And so being nice, you go in and you take, and the 5% on thousands of dollars is a big deal. So you go and you buy it, and turns out when you bring the merchandise outside, they strong arm it from you. So again, you know, you're out thousands of dollars. These are all affinity scams because they speak English. You feel a connection to them, and it's easier for them to manipulate your feelings towards that. And one of the most important things is know several ways to get in and out of a situation. What I mean by that is, if somebody approaches you, you feel uncomfortable, you should be prepared to walk away. Don't think you're being rude, and you should be prepared to walk to somewhere where it's safe, where there are other people looking over you. Which leads me to when you arrive at a destination, make sure you find out what the local emergency phone numbers are and memorize those. So I figured out that in a city in Italy, there are actually 3 different numbers for emergency services: one for police, one for medical, and one for fire. For us, we're used to dialing 911 for it all, but it's not like that all over the world. So one of the first things that behooves your safety is to find out what those numbers are and memorize those numbers. And think about what your plans are in terms of your travels, right? Do you want to save time by having a guide, or do you want to meander and wander on your own and figure things out along the way? Because just remember, if you've never been somewhere, every street you walk down is brand new to you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much for sharing so many important tips with us, and also some of the more popular scams that folks should be mindful of. Before we move to the questions, I'd like to ask you to put on your hat as an experienced traveler and as an expert in terms of some of the main takeaways that people should consider when they take a trip.
With with security in mind or aside, I would say the most important thing is just remember, again, just remember, every street that you walk down is a brand new experience. You're not visiting a certain country or a certain place to impress folks at home or your followers on social media. You're there for yourself. Remember that. You spend a lot of time and money preparing for this trip. It's for you and yourself ultimately. A lot of people would give you suggestions. Oh, well, you're there. Did you see this site? Did you see that site? Because that's what they've heard. That's where they've been. They want to talk about it. No, tailor your experience to yourself. And I always say, and it reinforced my feeling 2 months ago when I was in a hill town in Italy, and I saw a pack mule coming downhill carrying 3 full size, the largest size rolling luggages on its back with a handler in front. And I see a person in the back, and I said, "Hey, are those your bags?" And she said, "Yes." American traveler. She stayed up in a hill town, and she had so much luggage. The size of luggage was so big she had to hire a pack mule to move her luggage in and out of her hotel. Just remember, you're not visiting Siberia. Um, if you run out of something, let's say toothpaste, gel, walk into a local supermarket, have a new experience, try a new brand. Buying local is part of the experience. And the important thing also is to think about it. At the end of your trip, do a review, maybe on the last day, maybe on the last night. Did you have a good time? And if so, was it memorable? And think back, at any point, did you think you needed more than what you brought? If so, make a list of what you think you might have needed to make your next trip better. And if not, what didn't you use? Make a list of that too. And I always suggest when you come home and you unpack, make a list of what you unpacked. So next time when you head off to another destination, you don't have to stress out about what to bring, what not to bring. Just break out the list and throw everything back in the bag again.
Thank you, Jason. And before we get to the questions, I just want to highlight that my colleague Emily has dropped the information for AARP's Fraud Watch Helpline. It's open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The number is in the chat. It is 1-877-908-3360. So please refer to that. Let's see, questions from the audience. There are a couple of questions about eSIM cards, Jason. I'll just combine them. Um, can you explain once again the benefits of an eSIM card? And then also, are there any specific eSIM companies that you would suggest?
No problem. So in terms of eSIM, it is the new thing. So some of the newer phones like the iPhone 16 will not take a SIM card anymore. So it's not even physically possible to get a SIM card for some of the newer devices anymore. So just like any other consumer products, it behooves the user to do research on eSIM itself. But just again, a simple explanation of how to use an eSIM is that this is an example of what I do. So let's say I'm visiting France. So what I do is I do a search on Google, best eSIM for France, or you can do best eSIM for a particular region like Nice or Paris, right? And you'll probably get a list of 3 pages of returns. So as soon as you start clicking these returns, you will see certain companies, certain eSIM carriers that are repeated in different sites, in different groups like Reddit and Nextdoor, that these are really useful, or these are bad, these are good, what's good about what's bad. So you can usually narrow down the company that you should take a chance on, might I say, pretty quickly. Again, this is something that you should set aside an hour or two before you leave. Do some research on your own, do some due diligence. The answers are out there. And again, don't trust everything you read on the internet, but if you do due diligence, read enough about this particular topic, one or two companies inevitably would pop up. And you can go ahead and go to those company websites, see if the payment plan or the price plan meets your needs. They're usually a set price for a period of a week to a month, or a set price for an amount of data. So for me, I'm not a big time streamer or YouTube person. So 10 gigabytes for a month is way more than sufficient. And a lot of times I just start with a 5 gig. And what you do is once you make the purchase online, the company will send you an email with a QR code. And you open that email on a different device than the device that you're going to bring overseas with you, like your laptop or your iPad. And you use your phone, you scan that QR code. Scanning that QR code just logs you right onto the eSIM company's website, and also loads the eSIM onto your phone. So if you go to your device settings and you look for your eSIMs, and you should be able to switch on and off between the different SIM cards or eSIMs that are in your phone. So once you do that, once you see your new eSIM listed under your settings in your device, follow the instructions, go ahead and activate it, get the app so you can always be in communication or watch your account spending when you're overseas. And once you've done that, go ahead and turn off that eSIM and turn your local US SIM back on, get on the flight, and once you land, pretty much at the airport, I haven't had a problem when I turn off my US SIM and turn on my foreign eSIM. It hits their network right away. Your SIM is going to be registered. Your phone is going to be registered, and you are good to go. You can even use your device at that point to find, let's say, a locker in the airport or the bus stop in the airport. Super convenient. I was skeptical about it at first also, but again, now that is the trend. You can't get a SIM card into a phone physically anymore, and that is the wave of the future.
Thank you, Jason. Here is a question from P. Kirsch. How is Canada with all that you discuss? I believe this in relation to withdrawing cash or exchanging currency. Please correct me if I'm wrong, P. Kirsch. Is there a website that discusses each country's nuances on this topic?
No. In terms of withdrawals, I think the most important people you have to talk to is your own financial institution. So there are banks that will levy a huge fee on foreign transaction or foreign withdrawals from ATMs. Yet there are banks that will not. So some of the Money Smart websites, some of the more established Money Smart websites will be able to kind of point you in the direction of what those financial institutions are. And you might want to think about, again, this is something that you should be planning 2-3 weeks before your trip. Go to the institution's website or go in and talk to a banker and see if they levy a fee in the particular country that you go to. And there are two separate fees usually. There's a fee that your financial institution levy against you when you make a out of network transaction. There's a fee that the foreign bank where you're visiting will levy against you when you draw from their bank without using their card. So some financial institutions in the US refund the foreign transaction fee, that chunk right there. And some financial institutions in the US also go by the daily fluctuation exchange rate to give you the current rate instead of charging you a flat 10 or 15% markup just so they can recoup their costs if the currency fluctuates. So it's not a particular website that you can do research on. It's more a particular financial institution that you should do your research on. And it goes without saying it's the same as a credit card company. Some credit card companies levy a 10%, 5%, 10% charge on foreign transaction, while others do not. So again, go to the more reliable large websites that deal with financial matters and get yourself kind of a list of what these financial institutions are. Log online, check out what they've got to say, or just go into a bank and get the information yourself. And make sure you get that in writing, some kind of printed material when you walk into a bank. Yes, we don't charge a foreign transaction fee, and we refund your transaction fee. Make sure they're able to print that segment of their published website or their published work, just so you can have a copy when you open that account. And if there's any dispute in the future, you can say, hey, look, date and time I spoke with so-and-so, gave me this piece of paper, it says this.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing such important and useful information with us today. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but before we conclude today's program, I'd like to highlight 2 upcoming events from ARP that folks may be interested in. The first one is a free screening of the movie Thelma. It stars June Squibb and Richard Roundtree. The movie will be available beginning tonight at midnight, and it'll be available throughout the weekend. Registration is required. My colleague Emily has dropped the link in the chat. It's the first one, the one on top. It's the movie Thelma. We invite you to join us. Then the other one is a very special project that we do annually. It is a cart riding campaign for folks who can use a little cheering up for Valentine's Day. The deadline to register for this is January 14th, and the link is in the chat. It's the one at the bottom. Once again, folks, thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Emily, for all your help. We hope to see you again, and this concludes today's program.